Hello, everyone, and welcome to Triage Cancer's webinar, Coping with Cancer. My name is Madison McMahon Ward, and I'm the Program Coordinator for Triage Cancer. I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before we dive into today's topic, I just need to go over some housekeeping. All callers will be muted for the webinar. If you have technical problems, please type them in the chat box. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing by the end of the week at triagecancer.org. If you are calling in from a phone and are not logged on to the computer, you may receive an email saying that you did not attend. If you get this email, please reply with your phone number that you used to join the webinar. After today's session, you will be prompted to take the evaluation, and you will also receive an email tomorrow with the link to the evaluation. We would appreciate it if you could take a few moments to provide your feedback. We are very grateful to our sponsors for sponsoring the 2020 Triage Cancer webinar series. If you have any questions for our speakers, please type them in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen. Our speakers can only see questions posted in the question box. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please use the chat box to let me know and I will try and assist you. Please do not use the chat box to ask questions to our speakers or to talk with other attendees. A quick note about the slides of this presentation. They will not be distributed as they are not meant to be a standalone resource. The content can change frequently, so we don't want potentially outdated information to be shared. The resources mentioned during this presentation are available on triagecancer.org and cancerfinances.org. We encourage you to share our resources with your community, but we ask you to cite Triage Cancer as a resource. As part of the accreditation process for healthcare professionals, we have to read the following information. This presentation is intended to provide general information on the topics presented. It is provided with the understanding that the author is not engaged in rendering any legal, medical, or professional services. The planners and presenters of this program have not disclosed any pertinent financial relationships or conflicts of interest. While this educational program has received commercial support from the previously listed sponsors, the content of the program has no relation to the commercial interests of the organization's products or services. Triage Cancer is an accredited provider of continuing nursing education by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. Triage Cancer is also approved to offer social work continuing education by the Association of Social Work Boards approved continuing education program. Therefore, nurses and social workers participating in the live webinar and meeting the following requirements may be eligible for one continuing education credit. In order to receive continuing education credit, you must have registered online for today's session. People who are listening in on someone else's computer are not eligible for credit. You must attend the entire webinar. Partial credit will not be given. Anyone watching a recording of this webinar is also not eligible for credit. Within 1 week of this webinar, complete the evaluation and post-test. You must receive a passing grade on the post-test for credit. After the webinar, you will be redirected to the evaluation and post-test. Please note on the evaluation, it asks for your name and email address. You must include these so that we can certify that you completed the evaluation. That email is the address we will use to send the certificates, and we will send certificates within 4 weeks. For other professionals, we are more than happy to provide a general certificate of attendance. Just indicate that request on your evaluation. If you have any questions or experience any problems, email us at info@triagecancer.org. So with that housekeeping out of the way, Triage Cancer is a national nonprofit organization that provides education on the legal and practical issues that may impact individuals diagnosed with cancer and their caregivers. And I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing some resources with you so that you know where to go for more information or where you can send others. And we provide education in a few different ways. We participate in events all over the country. Some of these events are hosted by our cancer community partners, and some we host ourselves. To see where we will be, take a look at our events calendar. Every year, we host 3 free Triage Cancer conferences. This is a day-long event that covers a variety of topics for individuals diagnosed with cancer, caregivers, advocates, and healthcare professionals. In 2020, we will be hosting one conference virtually, and we plan to be in Chicago on October 10th. Registration is open. We also provide free contact hours for nurses and CEs for social workers. We also host a monthly webinar series open to everyone. If you weren't able to join us for a past webinar or you would like to hear the information again, remember that we post the webinar recordings on our website. We also host 2 educational programs for healthcare professionals. The first is our Insurance and Finance Intensive, and this is a full-day certificate program on health and disability insurance and finance. We also have a full-day training on employment called Navigating Cancer, Work and Insurance that we deliver with Cancer and Careers. You can get more information and register for these programs. We also offer the Triage Cancer Advocate Training to train people who are interested in getting more involved in cancer advocacy efforts. The next training will take place on October 9th in Chicago, and we have reopened the application and are accepting applications until July 31st. In addition to our events, we offer educational materials and resources. Our quick guides and checklists are designed to be a snapshot of a particular topic. They cover a variety of topics, and we are frequently adding new ones. These materials can be downloaded from our website, or you may order bulk hard copy materials at triagecancer.org/material request, and we will ship them to you for free. We know that it can be hard to find what you're looking for on the internet, so we compiled the contact information for some of the most frequently used state-specific agencies and resources. And because where you live can impact what protections you have access to, we have charts of state laws on employment, disability, health insurance, estate planning, and more. We recognize that everyone learns in different ways, so we also provide educational animated videos on topics such as health insurance, managing side effects at work, and more. Videos are available in English and Spanish, and stay tuned as we have more videos coming soon. Our newest video is on supporting caregivers, which covers some of the legal protections and programs available to caregivers. You can find all of our videos on Triage Cancer. We also offer most of our quick guides and all of our animated videos in Spanish. Cancerfinances.org is a site that we host to provide practical information on topics that can impact your finances. The website is designed to guide you to the information that is most relevant to your situation and connect you with financial assistance resources. We have modules on health, disability, and life insurance, education rights, estate planning, family building, caregiving, clinical trials, and a new COVID-19 module. Stay tuned for new topics. Triage Cancer and Citizen are partnering to give cancer patients an easy way to organize their complete health history, free of charge. Citizen is a free online resource that helps cancer patients quickly and easily request their full medical records from all of their providers. It's really easy to sign up at citizen.com/cancer. And finally, our educational blog not only provides great information about cancer survivorship topics, but because things are constantly changing in the cancer community, this is how we share late-breaking news. And we have our monthly e-newsletter, which is where we announce all of our upcoming events. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Allie Schaefer. Allie Schaefer is an expert reframer, dot connector, and noticer. She has a private counseling practice in Nashville, Tennessee, and provides individual and group therapy for adults navigating life transitions, coping with health challenges, and desiring to live more fully. Since 2003, Allie has worked directly with people impacted by cancer across the cancer care continuum in various clinical settings. Prior to starting her private practice, Allie was a faculty member and clinician with the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center psycho-oncology team and the manager of patient and family-centered care. In life and in her work, Allie is deeply influenced by nature and incorporates inspiration from the natural world along with her power of noticing to help people make sense of their world and create meaningful change to build a life they love. She is a dynamic national speaker and contributes content for articles, online blogs, and webinars on a variety of health and wellness topics. Remember, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A box, and Allie will answer them towards the end of the presentation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our speaker.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful to be here with everybody today and to be partnering with Triage Cancer for this webinar. Each time I work with Triage Cancer, I am reminded about the breadth of incredible resources and information that is available and remains up to date to address the unique needs of people impacted by cancer. So thank you for all of your efforts, and I hope all of the participants on the webinar will check out Triage Cancer resources that are valuable and can be specific to your unique needs. So with that being said, let's get started. I am attempting to advance the screens. There we go. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about coping with cancer, and the objectives of this webinar are going to be to provide an overview of various coping strategies and creative outlets that can help to enhance an individual's ability to adjust and adapt to a cancer diagnosis and successfully navigate the challenges and unique experiences associated with a cancer diagnosis. And I want to be really clear that this is an overview. Some of these concepts, some of these ideas you may have heard before and you may have forgotten, and today you'll remember. Some of these ideas might be new to you. All of this might be new to you. And I want to invite and encourage each of you that wherever you sit right now, and with regards to your personal or professional role and the connection to cancer, I hope that you'll gain insight. I hope that you'll think about things you have previously forgotten or be willing to take action as a result of this webinar. And I hope you'll gain tools that will support you in your life. I will also invite you to listen through your personal lens to find something that matches you and your particular place in life right now. So while some of the language might not necessarily directly apply to where you sit, I do hope that you'll be able to hear some things that are relevant. I'm seeing in the chat there's no audio, so I'm going to pause for a moment. Looks like there is audio on my end. Can anybody give me some feedback? Okay, sounds like some people can hear you. Thanks so much for your patience as we are all getting used to this virtual world and adjusting and adapting. So thank you. I will proceed forward. So one of the first things and coping techniques that I want to offer you is about framing the experience of cancer. And sometimes our mindset and our story or the narrative that we assign to a particular life experience can either increase our distress or can aid our ability to adapt and to respond to it. So in the framing of this cancer experience, I'd like to aid coping, increase your understanding, and most of all, to create possibility for new responses and new options. Let's talk about cancer through the lens of a life quake or a change your life moment. So what is a life quake? It's an event that suddenly changes your life, like a car accident, being laid off, an illness, getting divorced, in the same dramatic way that an earthquake might destroy a building. And so I want to be clear that in this moment where all of you sit in your world, you may actually be in the midst of experiencing multiple life quakes. We are in the midst of a pandemic. You may be in a particular place with regards to your experience of cancer. And you also may have any variety of other life events that are creating some shake it up, shake your life moments. And so as we look at the frame of a life quake, a change your life moment, it can represent sudden changes in multiple life arenas. It might increase stress, both acute in the moment and chronic over time. It might represent an experience of increased uncertainty. And I want to be clear that at any moment, there are so many things that remain uncertain in our life, but when an event like cancer happens, it can become more acutely clear of how uncertain things really feel. It can also represent a loss of or decreased sense of control or normalcy or routine. For many people, cancer can represent a loss of hopes and dreams, a shifting reality and future, and also can activate previous traumas or trauma responses. Cancer and life quakes can represent a disconnection from yourself and the things or people who matter to you. So it's a very abrupt event. And for some people, it's more of a slow lean into cancer. But regardless, there is often a moment or multiple moments where it shakes your world, it rocks your world, and destabilizes you. Life quakes and change your life moments can also create possibility and potential for new personal awareness, perspective, and discovery or activation of personal strengths. There's an opportunity to strengthen your own personal coping mechanisms and also to learn new techniques that can aid your response to stress or life quake moments. For many people, cancer or a life quake moment can clarify the life purpose or values that they personally hold, maybe that they had thought about, or for many people hadn't really considered before. Questions like, what is important to me? What matters to me? How do I want to show up in my life? And so cancer represents this opportunity to take a look at things through a new lens. For many people, they also experience a phenomenon entitled post-traumatic growth, that their life exponentially improves as a result of their experience with cancer. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean people are grateful necessarily or wish that they did get cancer, but it can mean that there are some positive benefits and outcomes that can result as a result of their experience with cancer. So again, setting up cancer as a life quake change your life moment can sometimes help to decrease some of the distress about things that are happening versus what you think should be happening, and helps to really see, that makes sense to me. I can understand why I'm experiencing a high degree of distress resulting from a cancer diagnosis. Or at any point along the cancer care continuum, you can experience a secondary or a tertiary life quake or change your life moment that kind of brings you back to that beginning. I want to take a moment just to address some of the factors that might influence an ability to cope with cancer, because I'm not sitting here and saying everybody is going to immediately know how to respond to cancer and know how to cope with cancer. And what's really important is to understand how your personal life, how your personal history may be contributing to your ability or inability to cope with cancer. So it can be really helpful, again, to understand the things that might impact your personal ability to cope with cancer. And by teasing apart the threads of what influences coping ability, it may also help you decide and determine some things that you need to address as part of your response or your coping strategies. So maybe you have some previous experience or exposure to cancer and the outcomes. Maybe you're sitting in the midst of a recurrence, or you have a community of people or a family history of a particular outcome related to a cancer diagnosis. This can impact how you're approaching cancer in your own life. Impact of treatment, both the intensity, the duration, these things can also impact ability to cope. If you have a trauma history, this might impact how you're able to experience and respond to this current event of cancer, which many people identify and describe as a traumatic event. Previous life experiences and stress can also impact your ability to cope in the now in both a positive way and a negative way. So maybe you're a rock star at responding to stress, and that could aid your ability to cope and respond to the increased stress as a result of cancer now. For people who have a prior history of mental health issues, this can certainly get exacerbated in the context of cancer. If you have personal perceptions, prejudices, or narratives about what cancer means to you or for other people, this can also contribute to your cancer response. If you have people who have died as a result of cancer or died as a result of other health conditions or other life events, you may also be carrying this loss and this grief with you into your own experience of cancer. The type of cancer, prognosis, your personal tolerance of physical symptoms can also impact how you're able to cope. For someone, nausea might be no big deal. And for someone else, nausea is going to be a really intense and debilitating experience that will influence their ability to respond to cancer and to do life with cancer. I also want to say that the co-occurring life events and life stressors can also impact ability. So for those of you who are sitting with multiple life quake moments in the middle of a pandemic and also at a certain point in a cancer experience, you may have decreased ability to respond and to cope with cancer right now because there's just too much on your plate, or it feels like there's too much on your plate. I want to also remind you that the experience of cancer, much like life, is not linear. And many people don't necessarily want to hear that, or it really highlights that the personal experience or story of life or cancer is that it's one smooth path forward, when in fact, it's far messier, moving in lots of different directions, forward, backwards, up, down, left, right. And this is all part of the process and the experience of both cancer and life. And so when you reframe and accept that things are not going to be linear, it might again help you accept and fall into a different relationship with the experience of cancer that will likely not be linear and straightforward. There might be parts of the experience of cancer that do proceed forward, but there are going to be other ones that don't. There are step backwards and step forwards. And much like life, in the context of cancer, you will likely experience periods of discomfort, be that emotional discomfort or physical discomfort. You will also have periods where you're adjusting to the increased distress, to the increased physical symptoms, or to the emotional stress. And you will also be acclimating. So, this is starting to feel a little bit more familiar, a little bit more comfortable in my 7th round of chemo because I know what to expect. And there are also going to be times in the experience of cancer that feel more full of ease and flow. It doesn't mean they're easy, but it might feel more able and more tolerable and more comfortable and more familiar. There's also, much like life, going to be times where it feels like you're going backwards. I hear from a lot of people when they experience regressions or setbacks that they feel incredibly stressed or feel like they're failing. And oftentimes regressions and setbacks are normal and may be on the forefront of indicating you're about to have a growth spurt or you're about to move forward into an adjustment phase or an acclimation phase. And so sometimes these periods of regressions or setbacks are also an indicator that it's time to regroup. And you might need to return back to the basics to reset yourself and your foundation before proceeding forward. Because what you need on day 1 in your experience of cancer is not going to be the same thing that you need on day 75 or day 350. And so it's important to periodically review, assess, prioritize, define, edit, organize, refresh, commit, and engage. All of these things are part of the cycle of how you're going to stay in the moment and most adaptive, flexible, resilient, and responsive to the experience of where you're at with cancer. And I love this quote by William James: life is in the transitions. We often want to fast forward through periods of transition because they are uncomfortable, because they are disorienting, because they might be painful. And yet there is a lot of opportunity for life to be lived, for life to be created, for habits and patterns to be developed in the transitional moments. And so I encourage each of you to consider, how can you be more fully present in the transition? And how can you be adding or aiding your experience of life in transitional moments? So here's another important coping thought and reframe. In working with people impacted by cancer, there's often this statement of, I wish you could just tell me what to do, or I wish there was a book that told me how to handle cancer or how to act. And I'm in the unfortunate position of saying, yeah, unfortunately, there's no single blueprint or roadmap for the maze of cancer, because if there were, it wouldn't be taking into account your unique identity, personality, stress response, and coping mechanisms that are going to serve you well as you navigate through the experience of cancer. And so even just understanding and allowing for your own decision making, your own personal experimentation and exploration to decide what feels good and what will help you in this moment can be really freeing and open you up to new possibilities. And this quote I thought was so wonderful, that this lack of blueprint can sometimes feel overwhelming. The good news of experiencing transitions or living life in general out of order, I might take that part of the quote out because I don't think cancer is living out of order, is that we're freed from the shackles of expectation, whether they come from our parents, our neighbors, or ourselves, and we can make our own choices and decide what brings us peace. So it's a reminder that in the absence of a blueprint, in the absence of rules, you get to make your own rules. And with that empowered choice, what kind of decisions and choices do you want to make? Are you willing to create your own roadmap for cancer? So let's talk about choices. Viktor Frankl, many of you might be familiar with his work in The Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about, even in the face of suffering, there are still choices to be made. And so in any given set of circumstances, you can choose your own way. And when you are no longer able to change a situation like cancer, you are challenged to change yourself. And how can you change yourself to become more adaptive, more responsive, better able to cope with the experience of cancer? And so I'll offer you the power of choice, and for you to think about these questions. What kinds of choices can you or do you want to make in response to your experience of cancer? What actions could you take? What kinds of choices or actions can you take right now? So even breaking it down to, instead of thinking about it like, I have to think about how I'm going to cope with all of cancer, well, how are you going to cope with the moment right now? Life is full of choices. It doesn't mean you chose cancer, but it does mean you can choose how you respond to cancer. So I want to spend the rest of our time thinking about what some of these choices might be to aid you in your own coping. So when we think about cancer as a life quake, which a life quake, like an earthquake, is destabilizing and can often feel disorienting. It often takes away or impacts or becomes a threat to personal safety and security. And so it can be helpful to establish stability, security, and safety. And you can do this with any number of ways: creating daily routines or weekly routines, creating rituals that help you to feel supported and grounded and connected to yourself or others, using movement, physical movement, to help aid yourself and to keep you connected with yourself, and to allow yourself to release and express any experiences that are getting pent up in your body. It also is important to include and incorporate rest and restful experiences, and then to consider nutrition. And nutrition, not just in what foods do I feed my body, but what kinds of social connection, what kind of nature or nurturing experience am I feeding myself with that can help me to feel more stable, more secure, and more safe so that I can respond to the threat of cancer? This is another one that people often try to bypass. I don't want to feel my feelings. Well, here's the good news and the bad news. Feeling your feelings is of utmost importance and will provide meaningful information, meaningful exposure to what's going on for you, and breadcrumbs to help you through the experience of cancer. And oftentimes people are afraid to feel their feelings because it's uncomfortable, because it might be painful. Maybe they haven't learned how to previously feel and relate to their feelings in a way that feels healthy and tolerable or comfortable. And there's often a notion in the cancer community that you have to be positive all the time. And if you express a perceived negative emotion, then you've given up, or you're not being positive, or something bad is going to happen. And actually, the research shows that by expressing and experiencing the full range of emotions, you're setting yourself up for a better ability to respond to cancer and to have a more healthy processing and coping. And so I really love these techniques by Tara Brach. It's a technique called RAIN, where you recognize what is happening, allow it to happen, investigate what's going on with curiosity, and then nurture with a loving presence or response. What do I need right now, given that I'm feeling sad, or given that I'm feeling overwhelmed because I have scans coming up? And so this technique can really give you steps to work through that allow you to learn how to process your feelings so that you can also release them. Amber Ray is another incredible individual who has these great illustrations, how to feel your feelings. And as you look through the illustration, you might see, oh, that feels really familiar, or, oh, that's really helpful. Some questions to ask yourself when you're in the moment, or when you're ready to feel your feelings, if you've needed to put them to the side for a moment. And then also this really great illustration of how to sit with discomfort. There's a lot of parts of life, there's a lot of parts of cancer that are uncomfortable. And so learning how to sit in the discomfort can actually be a stress reliever and can actually help you adapt in a different and healthier way to the things that are happening in your life. So tend to your feelings. They're going to come up at some point, and so learning how to do them in the now is going to set you up for your ability to cope with cancer. It doesn't mean you have to respond to every feeling, and it doesn't mean you have to do it all right now. You can take steps and you can decide, this is what I can handle right now, and this is what I need to handle later. Knowing that you've got to come back to the later. That's very important. I can imagine each of you sitting on this webinar today can think about a moment where you didn't tend to feelings, and they probably came out at a really inopportune or inconvenient time and created more damage than intended had you sat with them and processed them. Another choice to cope with cancer is compassion. And I can imagine that some of you may be rolling your eyes on this webinar today. Oh, I have to be compassionate. That's how I'm going to deal with cancer. Really frustrating, Allie. And I get it. Compassion can be such a gift when you think about being kind to yourself and others as you're responding to stress and adjusting over time. Compassion can be so useful when you take a misstep or when you make a mistake, as you will, because you're human. And to be compassionate to yourself and others when you're in the thick of an emotional response, or when another person's experience or response is different than your own. So how can you invite and invoke compassion to be supportive to you as you're navigating these life quakes of cancer? Breathing techniques. Now, I love this, and some of you may be familiar with some of these different breathing techniques, but they can be so instrumental in reducing stress. helping you to feel more calm, more focused, and more centered. And so I've included a number of different breathing techniques, and the research for each of these is varied, but it shows that it does positively decrease stress. It can activate the calming nervous system, taking your body out of fight or flight and into a calm and responsive state. It can help with sleep patterns. The last one I also want to note, breath of fire, is more of an activating and energizing breath technique. And so I wanted to include one that's not only calming, because sometimes people need to activate in their days to do different activities or to increase and elevate their mood. And so I wanted you to have that option as well. These are so easy to practice, and while breathing techniques might sound silly, many of us walk around our daily lives with very shallow breathing, and we're not getting the full benefit of oxygen through our body or for breath. And so to engage with some of these techniques that will slow you down, that will bring you into focus, that will help your system be in that open, receptive state, will then help you show up to your life differently. So I invite you to look at these different techniques. In the absence of too much time today to go through each of these, you can easily do some research online to understand and to learn each of these techniques. And I invite you, don't just look at the research of what these techniques offer. Try them and practice them for yourself. That's immediate feedback. Some of these might work for you. Some of these might work for you at different times. I remember the first time I did alternate nostril breathing, which is supposed to be a calming and relaxing, centering breath practice. I got so activated and was so anxious. But at later points, I was able to come back to it and receive some of the calming, relaxing benefits of this breath practice. You can do these while you're in traffic, although don't close your eyes while you're driving. You can do these while you're waiting at the doctor's appointment, while you're starting your morning, or while you're readying for bed, depending upon where you're at and what you need. So I invite you to try these different breath practices. See how they feel for you. They're free. And what I'll also note is, if you're not practiced in full breath, getting that breath all the way into the belly because you're really shallow breathing, when you start some of these breath practices, you may find yourself getting a little lightheaded and dizzy. So go slow. Make sure you're in a safe and comfortable place when you practice or try any of these breath techniques until you become more practiced and experienced. Meditation. This is another incredible technique to cope with the experience of cancer as well as any life stressors. And so I want you to see all these different benefits. I also wanted to include the various types and forms of practices: mindful meditation, open awareness, moving meditation, because sometimes people have a really limited view of what meditation is. I have to do it in the morning, I have to be in a dark room, and I have to be sitting still. Well, for a lot of people who are used to moving very quickly through their day, to think about coming to a full stop and just being with their thoughts can feel very overwhelming. And so for some people, doing a moving meditation, like a walking meditation or meditating while gardening or cooking, can be more helpful and can feel more accessible to experience a meditative state. There are some incredible free apps that you can try: Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, and you can try a lot of these different ones to find voices that you like, styles that you like, and again, having a variety of meditations in your toolkit that you can access at any point in time. Creativity and creative expression. This is such a fun one, and I wanted to really highlight the benefits and the opportunities to use expression and different forms of expression. Not everybody has words to describe their experience of cancer. While people are processing and making sense of the experience, they can benefit from having alternate ways of expressing, of connecting, and of relating to what's going on with their cancer experience while they're in it or in the future. And so there's so many different ways: journaling, expressive and therapeutic writing, creating visual or written art. I had a client that I worked with years ago who had a diagnosis of cancer and was really struggling to relate to this diagnosis. She was an artist, so I invited her to paint her disease and then to put it in a prominent place in her house so she could begin to relate to this diagnosis that was living inside of her body, but it helped her externalize it so she could gain a different perspective, an objective view to look at it differently, and then to choose, how did she want to relate to this? What did she want to make of it? What kind of meaning did she want to assign to it? And it really helped aid her process. So even if you're not currently identifying as a creative person, you can still practice and experiment with various types of creative expression, putting on your favorite music and just dancing and moving your body how it wants to move. Lately, I've been having dance parties in my car, and it's so much fun. And when someone at the stoplight pulls up to me and they look over and smile, it just makes me smile. And then it invites them to have a dance party in their own car. So there's a lot of ways to get creative, to not only have to use words as the way and verbal expression as the way to process your experience and support yourself with cancer. Connection and support. So as I mentioned at the beginning, a life quake is often disconnecting. And one of the things it does is disconnect you from yourself and from others. And so part of a coping mechanism is a reconnection to self and to others. And so thinking about how will you or are you staying connected to yourself through the experience of cancer, and looking at some of these questions just can aid your own personal observation, your personal reflection, not from a lens of judgment, but from a lens of curiosity. How can you stay connected to yourself? What is your personal response and style to stress? These things can be really helpful to know so that you're not sitting in judgment, but saying, oh, that's right. I typically get really quiet when I'm stressed. So that's probably what's happening for me right now. These things can help you to navigate the various emotional responses to help meet the practical and logistical needs that come up as a result of cancer. So looking inward, looking to yourself for these answers, again, as you're creating your own roadmap and as you're navigating your way through your maze of cancer. Connection to others. You don't have to do this alone. That is one of the things that I say over and over. We are not meant to do this lifetime alone. We are meant to heal, to learn, to laugh, to grow, to connect in the context of community, whether that's cancer-related community or non-cancer-related community. And so cancer can create an opportunity for connection, for access to new people in your lives, or to fill certain gaps that have become open as a result of your diagnosis of cancer. And so taking the moment to say, what are your needs? Do you need peer support? Do you need information? Do you need services or resources? Or do you want to connect with people who have shared or similar experiences? Being able to identify your need can help then say what's local and available to me, what's national and available to me online or for a weekend conference or retreat, or what are some of the chat rooms that I might like to connect to for support and connection. Cancer can feel really lonely. And I just want to remind you, there are a lot of people who can understand and are navigating the things that you're experiencing. It's really important for you also to understand that at times it can be necessary and important to seek professional support. And enlisting the support and guidance of a licensed professional can be an important part of your cancer experience. A licensed professional can directly impact and support you as you navigate cancer. Sometimes seeking professional support can be a short-term, very time-limited experience, 3 to 4 sessions. Some people really benefit and go for more long-term relationships, and some people start in and out. So you can craft and connect with a professional really tailored to what you need in the moment. but it starts with just understanding that it might be really helpful for you to get some professional support. That's that neutral, objective, non-family or friend connected support that you can say anything that you need to as you're navigating and experiencing cancer. Here are some additional actions to support coping. Some of these are going to be actions that you'll do to really nourish and nurture your system, to help fill you up so that you can respond to the tasks and the stress of cancer. Some of these things are going to be things that you're going to reduce or minimize to, again, aid your energy expenditure, and also to really be thoughtful about what you're taking in, what additional information you're having to digest and consume on top of the things related to cancer in your life. So I want you to consider there's a lot of different ways to cope with cancer. You don't have to do everything at once, but it's really helpful to have a robust and diverse toolkit to pull from, depending upon what you need. Sometimes one of these techniques that we've talked about today are going to really address what you need in the moment. And sometimes you might need to string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things together to really create the response that you need to show up fully. And I'll invite you to add your own if I haven't talked about them today. Again, this is an overview, but I want to empower each of you. You're an expert in your own life. You know what you need. You know what is helpful to you. And so the invitation today is, will you trust that? Will you trust yourself to take care of yourself, even when you're afraid, even when you're scared, even if you're not sure? Be willing to try and then to see, how did that feel? Would I like to do that again? Do I need to make some changes? The last thing is a permission slip. So if I haven't covered something today that you really needed to hear or you really needed to receive to feel more confident about how you're going to navigate your experience of cancer, or how you're going to care for your patients or your clients that are experiencing cancer, you can print this out and you can give yourself a permission slip. Whatever you need, give it to yourself, not just today, but daily, or whenever you need those moments. You can give yourself permission for the things that you need without apology. That's the overview, and just want to say, if you've got additional questions or comments, I welcome the opportunity to connect with you and hear feedback. So please follow up with me. Again, in our limited time today, I wanted to provide a little menu of things that you can try, things that could be really instrumental to your experience of coping. And maybe if nothing else, everything you heard, you already knew. And so it's just confirmation you're on the right path. That can be really valuable as well. So thank you. And we'll be answering questions at the end of Melissa's talk today.
Hello, everyone. Going to remove Allie from control. Thank you so much, Allie, for that great information. And I just want to quickly apologize for any audio issues at the beginning. It appears that I have not so stable internet connection. But I want to introduce our next speaker, Melissa Meza. Melissa Meza is a health education specialist with the California Rural Indian Health Board, where she coordinates the work of the California Tribal Comp Cancer Program, working with tribal health programs in communities in California. Additionally, she is a California representative of the National Native Network, which provides numerous cancer and commercial tobacco prevention resources for AIAN. She holds a BS in Nutrition and Food Services and is currently working on a Master's of Public Health at the University of San Francisco. In the past, she has led the work of state-funded nutrition education and obesity prevention grants at the county level, providing services to low-income, underrepresented rural communities. Remember, if you have Any questions for our speakers, please type them in the Q&A box and we will get to them at the end. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Melissa.
Hi, thank you, Madison and Ali. I wanted to thank Ali for kind of giving a really good overview. So today I'll just be talking about American Indian and Alaska Native coping strategies. So this is a group that has somewhat distinct coping strategies. So we'll consider and identify the potential benefits of these coping strategies, as well as identify some potential resources that can support American Indian cancer survivors. So for the sake of time, I will be going through this rather quickly, but if you would like any more information, please just go ahead and contact me. For the purposes of this presentation, the words Native American and American Indian Alaska Native may be used interchangeably. But other than that, I will go ahead and get started. So really, how can we support American Indian cancer survivors? So first, we have to begin by understanding the dynamic by which they live by. So the beliefs of American Indian Alaska Natives are deeply rooted in tradition, culture, and the preservation of familial ties. Elders are believed to be highly respected individuals who others will seek information from, and traditional and cultural practices will depend greatly on the tribal region. So as you're just taking in some of this information, just know that depending on where that survivor is from, there will be some differences within the regions and how those traditional and cultural practices are carried out. Essentially, healing occurs within the context of the community as a whole, and as I mentioned, family is very important here. Many AIAN believe there is one sacred power known as the Creator. This higher being may vary among tribal people and may even have different names. Some may establish their connection more so with the earth rather than the Creator, but overall, the mind, body, and spirit are interconnected and function as one. Traditional approaches believe that illness is caused by a lack or absence of spiritual program, and in some cases this can carry on into the survivor's experience through cancer. Essentially, the beliefs of American Indian Alaska Natives are grounded on a holistic based approach, and so it's really important to make sure that when suggesting coping strategies to that American Indian Alaska Native survivor, it is including, things such as their traditional and cultural practices, which I will cover next. Historically, American Indians have reported experiencing provider mistrust and a lack of access to more culturally tailored coping strategies. And some have said speaking of cancer is taboo and may even be inviting it into the body. So we may see some hesitancy in accepting Western medicine and coping strategies. If you only learn one thing from this, it is that to really understand what the American Indian Alaska Native patient is going through and how to provide coping strategies, it is necessary to ensure that the patient has access to these more holistic practices beyond Western medicine. Some of those will also include the ones that Ali mentioned in her presentation. So what are cultural and traditional coping strategies? So these will include sweat lodge ceremonies or drumming circles, prayer and blessings, smudging, pipe ceremonies, storytelling, talking circles, and traditional and herbal remedies. I will touch on a couple of these, but I won't go too in depth. Again, this is an overview, so I don't want to provide you with too in-depth information. So sweat lodge ceremonies, how do these work? Individuals are typically invited into a dome-like structure where a fire has been lit by the fire keeper. The shape of the lodge is thought to represent the womb of the earth, which is intended to renew and purify those within. Most sweat lodge ceremonies will be used to give thanks, to promote healing, to seek wisdom, and to purify the mind, body, and soul of negative energy. So really the goal to the sweat lodge ceremony is to improve the body's energy flow and to teach the individual to overcome physical and emotional discomfort so that the body can heal itself. It is thought to be a spiritual reunion with the Creator that provides the participant with a healing connection specifically with the earth. So when we're talking about cancer survivors, these are some techniques that American Indian Alaska Native survivors will utilize. And this is more so to kind of get that connection back with the earth and the creator. Other benefits that can be applied for other survivors, even if they are not American Indian Alaska Native, is that they have the ability to fight infection. So while this is a hot environment, it is believed that it promotes the body's ability to raise its temperatures and fight off infections, decrease inflammation, and increase blood flow. One thing is that if you do plan to enter a sweat lodge ceremony, whether you're invited to it or are attending with a family member, it is important to contact or to speak with your healthcare provider to assure that you are in a healthy state to enter these sweat lodge ceremonies. Next, we have smudging. So smudging is one of the ways to energetically cleanse a space to invite positive energy. When smudging a space, you burn plant material. In some cases, you'll see the use of cultural tobacco or sage, or even dried herbs to create a smoke that can be passed gently through the air. Most typically, what I've seen in California are the use of sage. So the sage is usually wafted into the air, and as it raises, you're asked to state your intentions and in order to go with peace. In some cases, smudging can be used at the beginning or end of a ceremony as a blessing. So when somebody is experiencing feelings of distress or that kind of thing, they can attend a smudging ceremony to really allow them to purify their soul. And as I said, these are American Indian Alaska Native traditions. And if you are a true believer, this is something that typically will help you find peace. And I'm seeing in the chat, some people are saying there's no slides. So yeah, there will not be slides for this presentation as it is only for educational purposes. So the next thing we have is prayer. So it is a very highly used form of coping. It is one of the top forms reported to be used by American Indian Alaska Native survivors. It's a form of, once again, connecting to one's spirituality and maintaining harmony with oneself. In this case, the individual may pray on their own or may enlist help from family members, which in this case would be considered a prayer circle. Prayer circles involve a group of individuals, most often elders and direct family members, that gather around the individual seeking prayer to transfer energy from the group to the patient. The group will place their hands on or near the part of the patient's body where the pain is most intense. And essentially, they are using energy and prayer to bring balance, promote healing, and strengthen the body's ability to heal. Some have reported that it invites the patient's ancestors to also join the room and promote healing from beyond. So then with that, we also have storytelling and talking circles. So storytelling has been used to maintain culture and tradition among American Indian Alaska Natives. It is among the most common traditions that are still used to date, and it is used as a way to teach others, share experiences, and ultimately honor life. Most recently, storytelling has been used during talking circles. And then these talking circles are used as a means of group communication that can be used for ceremonial or therapeutic purposes. They are typically started with a prayer from an elder or a blessing, and these create a safe environment for those in need of finding peace within themselves and those with them. So historically, these storytelling and talking circles have been used to really allow people to talk about their cancer experience or gain knowledge from others. And typically, people leave here feeling more able to speak about their experience. In most AIAN cultures, people do not like to bring up their cancer experience. As I mentioned, it is thought to be taboo. And so the last one that I really want to cover are traditional and herbal medicines. So traditional and herbal medicines have been used in tribal communities. They have a long history of using indigenous or native plants for a wide variety of medicinal purposes. All of the parts of a plant can be used, as far as the seeds, the berries, the roots, the bark, the leaves, and the flowers. Some commonly used plants and herbs include sage, berries, cedar, sweetgrass, and cultural tobacco. The use and type of medicinal plants can vary, and their applications is as diverse as the tribes who use them. So just some examples of these traditional herbal medicines. These would include something like capsaicin, ginger, and turmeric. So these typically reduce pain sensation in the central nervous system. The phytochemical in ginger can reduce inflammation, muscle and joint pain, and soreness. And then for turmeric, this is an active ingredient that has been known to reduce inflammation and chronic pain. So as either public health professionals or cancer survivors, these are things that can be suggested to that survivor to, provide some type of coping in the event that they don't want to utilize medicine. So really, when we are talking about cancer survivors and how it applies to American Indian Alaska Natives, it is really important to make sure that that person has access to more cultural aspects of their coping strategies. And so making sure that they have availability of going to a talking circle or partaking in storytelling and that kind of thing allows them to really share their stories and connect more with the creator and have that more mind, body, and spirit experience. So one thing that I did want to share before I let everybody go for the sake of time is that the American Indian Cancer Foundation actually has a survivor group that they put on. If you just go into Google and search American Indian Cancer Foundation, they do have resources available specifically for survivors. Through the California Rural Indian Health Board, we also have information that we can share depending on what you're looking for. That'll be either mental health services, public health services, or anything that has to do with tribal health programs. So if you are somebody who works with these types of organizations, definitely please reach out and go ahead and ask us any questions. So as I said, this was just a really quick overview for the sake of time. I'll let Madison go ahead and take over, and if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat.
Thank you so much, Melissa. For the sake of time, we won't be answering any questions, and we currently don't have any questions. But if anyone does have questions for our speakers, please feel free to reach out to them via email. They provided that information for you. But before we go, I just want to remind you all of the requirements to receive continuing education credit. You must have registered online for today's session. People who are listening in on someone else's computer are not eligible for credit. You also must have attended the entire webinar. No partial credit will be awarded. Anyone watching a recording of this webinar will also not be eligible for credit. Within 1 week of this webinar, complete an evaluation and post-test. You must receive a passing grade on the post-test to be eligible for contact hours. You will be redirected to the evaluation once this webinar ends, and you will also receive an email tomorrow which will contain the link to the evaluation and post-test. Please note that on the evaluation, it asks for your name and email address. You must include these so that we can certify that you completed the evaluation. That email is the address we'll use to send the certificates, and we'll be sending them out within 4 weeks. For other types of professionals, we are more than happy to provide a general certificate of attendance. Just make sure to indicate that request on your application. And if you have any questions or experience any problems, info@triage.org. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we hope that you found this presentation useful and will continue to stay connected with Triage Cancer.